So, Lair, today we're supposed to talk about the emotional window
Mm.
for men, exploring the narrow emotional range many men experience and how that impacts relationships and self understanding. Today, we're supposed to talk about the anger and vulnerability trap, why men often swing between anger and vulnerability, and how to find a healthier emotional range.
Mm.
But I want to talk about your stitches. I want to talk about Costa Rica. I want to talk about if you guys ride motorcycles there. I want to talk about the pros and cons of your move. Because we could switch it up. And listen, people know I throw boomerangs, meaning we could come back to that. But
Sure. Yeah. No, no, we could let's talk about it. So 18,
stitches.
18 stitches in total, 12,
Wow.
12 in the face. Can't really maybe you can see it. It's right here.
Oh yeah, I see it. I see it.
Yeah, it's my one of my sons looked at me and they're like, Dad, that's a fucking cool scar. I was like, thanks. And I'm lucky because my wife, she's the type of person she doesn't like pretty boys. She likes obviously. Um,
Yeah. Either is mine.
Yeah, she said, I like the fact that your nose has lived on one side of your face or the other, depending on the year. So, um, yeah, so I'm good in that regard. But yeah,
Wait, how did you get the stitch? How did you? What happened?
freak accident. It's like I've been surfing for quite a while in some pretty hairy places, and this is a pretty. I mean, it's definitely a world class wave, but it's like a gentle wave by and large. And this was not and I'll spare all the boring surfy details, but it was not a big wave. I was just going to kind of pull out because it was too small. And I ended up
Mhm.
kind of going over the falls, as we say in surfing. And one of the things you want to do with surfing is you always want to recognize that the ocean is bigger than you. And
Yeah.
it is always, for me, an exercise in radical acceptance and letting go. The more
Hmm.
you do that, the more you recognize, because you have no control really when you're out there. And so there's a real like sort of practice that I have, and I sort of let go and said, okay, well, it's going to do what's going to do. I'll cover up. Well, the board ended up corking in the water and shooting back up. The tail
Oh,
shot back up, and I
yeah, yeah.
went like this, but it was like someone hit me with a good overhand right and got between my guard, and it hit me here, obviously, and the fin came up under, and I didn't know it, but sliced me open under the arm too. Which
Wow.
there's a lot under there that can not be good. I looked at my board, actually sustained as much or more damage than I did. My wife said later, she said, I'm just glad there was so much blood that I couldn't tell how bad it was. When I got to the emergency
Oh, yeah.
room, there's apparently a circular muscle right here
In your
that
mouth.
that allows you to do all the things that I'm doing right now, and more, smiling, eating. And the doctor looked at me and he goes, "Oh." And now I've had a bunch of stitches in my face before. I figured like I'll get stitched up. It'll be a little painful, not a big deal. He's like, "This is not good." And I was like, "Oh man." He said,
Mm.
"Well, we're going to see what we can do." And so he did a great job. He did an amazing job, this guy. And what I had done is I had almost severed the muscle in totality, which
Wow.
would have dramatically impacted the functionality of my mouth,
Yeah. In your speech.
my speech,
Yeah.
all of it. And yeah, so it fucked me up pretty good. And
Wow.
the recovery was great. My kids think I might be the Wolverine after they look at
Mm.
the board, which I think is awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
it was worth it.
yeah, yeah, it jacked up my teeth a little bit, so I'm probably gonna have some more dental work done. Um, but yeah, it's as the doctor said to me as I lay there on the table that day. He said, "What I know for sure is this would not have happened had you been sitting on the couch."
Yeah, that is true. What are your thoughts about Costa Rica? You guys have been there for 2, 3 weeks so far, or has it been a month?
About a month. Mhm.
Yeah, pros and cons. And for people who don't know, you are coming from
Originally, New York City came through. We were living in Charleston, South Carolina, for about
right.
10 years, and then came here. And there's not a lot of cons. Some people might see them as cons. I don't. It's a little like stepping back in time.
Right.
You know, like you're not going to be getting Amazon here. You're not going to be getting Walmart close by where we are. And some other people may see it as cons, but like nature's real here.
Yeah.
Like we've
Yeah.
capped nature really, really well. And I mean, right, for better or for worse in the United States, we don't have a good relationship with nature, but nature's alive and well. Um,
Mm.
and Mother Nature has like a vibrant energy here and a force, and the people, the culture is one where they sort of allow for that, and so they're very conscious. They recycle, but it's also like I'm not going to freak out about that spider or the fact that you may see it before the session's over. But the crickets here, not the crickets, yeah, the crickets, they're the size of your hand. They look like birds.
Holy shit.
They're fucking
Yeah,
huge.
that's my big fear with Vanessa. She, arachnophobia. She sees the spiders are the big thing, but
Ash too, same.
big bugs, man. She starts screaming, and so
Yeah, I mean, you see them here and there, and you sort of you kind of get used to them, and they're used to you. And it's like, as my 12-year-old son said to me the other day, he turned to me, he goes, "Dad, I think we live in the most beautiful place I think I've ever seen in the world."
oh
And I said,
wow,
"That
nice.
might be right. It's pretty amazing." Mhm.
It must be nice to hear that as a dad, especially because they may have ambivalence and may not want to be there, but for him to say, "Wow, this place is beautiful," that must be very very validating for you.
Arguably, they gave up more than we did, right?
Right, that's what I mean.
With friends and connection and just time in
Hmm.
their lives. And quite frankly, a lot of families leave Costa Rica, expats leave Costa Rica with kids our age because the kids are like, I want to do high school in the States, and that's just not an option for us. Um, so they arguably left a lot more than perhaps we did socially, and so both kids are like, yeah, no, I totally miss my friends, and I absolutely love this place.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
Um, any personal revelation so far that you've been down there
Um,
about self, about life, about? I mean, one of the things is like just the force of nature. You
yeah,
know.
vulnerability, man. Like, so, this like this thing happened to me, and I think it's asking something in particular of me that perhaps I would have been asked at a much lower volume had I still been back in the States. But because I'm thrust into this lifestyle and everything's been churned up, yeah, it's almost to our topic, right? Like vulnerability. Um,
Yeah.
I I am gonna celebrate your vulnerability, John, and I'm gonna, you know, I'll love you through it and help you open doors to get there. That's part and parcel of what I do on a daily basis with people. I'm gonna
Hmm.
invite the vulnerability of my friends and my wife and my children. I love it when people express themselves that way, but I don't fucking want to do it myself, if I'm honest.
Oh, you could hold it, but you don't want to practice it.
And I tell myself that I'm doing it, and I'm really not.
Mm.
And in particular, and just having said just what I told you, that was very vulnerable for me. I could feel like almost truth tears coming up as I said it.
Mm. Wait, how
And
do you know that you're not? How do you know that I'm not really being vulnerable?
because I edit,
Oh, I see.
my inner critic comes up, and I see you
Yeah.
do shit on Instagram, and I'm like, that motherfucker is out there, man. Like he's
What am I doing?
fucking guy is out there. Like I'm sitting there going, holy shit, good for you, but like, and I and so I look at like not why did this happen to me, because there are far greater tragedies in the world, but why did this happen, right? Like what's the message? Like I'm always looking for
Yeah. Deeper.
universe,
Right.
now, like what's the force trying to tell me? And that was interesting. And like, and my wife, I said, I don't know. She's like, well, what's the lesson here? What do you learn? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Be more careful, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's like, that's not it. Like you're a very careful surfer. It's something else. Something else is happening here. And because I'm very connected to my spiritual, not spiritual God, but just like the essence of my being, my soul. And lo and behold, and I'm going to fuck up the name, but there's this Japanese art of kintsugi.
Oh, yeah, something. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The shattered plate that
Yeah,
is glued back with gold and better, after it's been shattered.
and I'm looking at this. This just came up on my feed. Like weirdly asking this question, and this all of a sudden this video or this about this woman who's practicing kintsugi, and I'm like, and I'm looking at the shattered, fractured, fixed places, and it looks remarkably like this.
Oh yeah, right, right. The
And I'm like,
stitches.
son of a bitch. And honestly, I just started to sob,
Oh.
like truth tears just fucking
Mm-hmm.
welled up, you know, that I'm so not apt to want to share that. Like
Mm,
I was ashamed that this happened to me.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I didn't tell anybody.
You didn't
I,
tell anyone? I mean, besides your family.
I didn't really tell anybody. I told you.
Yeah.
I think that's about it.
And now, all my listeners.
Yeah, all your listeners and my scant few. Um,
Well,
yeah,
let me ask you this: why this shame? Why is a surfboarding accident lying with shame?
just because it was so vulnerable, it was just it. You know, it was bad. Like I remember, I said to, I came up out of the water, and Ash was still. She's a few yards away from me in the lineup, and I go, Ash, I'm hurt. It's bad.
Mm,
And just being in that state, I was very very vulnerable. You know, I still had to get my board and strap the boards of the car and get myself to the emergency room, and I handled that well. But it was like this: there was this sense of weakness, this sense of failure
yeah.
that came over me.
Is it also different because, say, you were in the water and let's say you got a shark bite, tons of blood, 18 stitches. That would be a whole different thing. I mean, there wouldn't be shame in that. There would almost be like a badge of honor.
Yeah,
No?
I made it through it. Yeah,
This
perhaps.
is more because it was like almost an accident that like or something about like the surfboard coming back up and then hitting you in the face. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it was a preventable accident that I
yeah,
probably could have been more careful with, perhaps. But it's yeah that I think I got hurt, and yeah, it was, and that I needed help.
right, right.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, it's like now there's this very visible scar that happened here. So it was interesting to me that that came up, that was, and it seemed sort of antithetical to me to go like my shame, like this isn't, like I knew from a conscious perspective, like that's not something to be ashamed of. However,
Right.
you know, and I mean, again, I would have been more than happy to help anybody else and have helped friends who have been hurt very badly in the water. Uh, but when it came to me, that was hard. That was hard.
Yeah, and your true story and actually what you're sharing is kind of a accurate uh, temperature gauge, just in general with men, which is a broad stroke. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, to be hurt as a man, to be bleeding, uh,
To need help.
to need help, right? Is not only humbling, but you can feel that that means that you're weak. You can feel that because of that you failed. You can feel that you are, all these things not adequate. I mean, it's the internalization of that, and then of course the shame. And I think that's what's dangerous is the shame piece.
Yeah, I found I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to. You know, my wife was, well, did you tell this person? I was like, no. Are you gonna?
Yeah.
Oh no. Have you told that person? No. Have you talked about it on your, you know, Instagram channel? No. I did a video and haven't posted it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is it also because of your story, like just kind of growing up tough, different definition of man, bar fights. Like, I mean, you and I have very different stories, right? So I wonder if some of this is residue from the past, identity.
Sure. Sure. There was a level of embarrassment about it, right? And again, I know
Mm,
it's not. I don't think it's appropriate. Um, but yeah, there was a sheepishness about sharing it,
mm,
that I was that weak, I suppose. And it's not like I walk around, you know, alpha mailing it, and you know, that's not my mo. And again, it's like I'll celebrate vulnerability in others. And if someone came to me with that and said, "Wow, shame came up for me," I'd be really curious about it, and I would also try to help them find another version of that experience.
Right.
But that's just what came up.
You know, a story comes up for me as I'm hearing you tell your story. When I was about 27, I was in Hollywood pursuing screenwriting, and there was no such thing as laptops. They just come out. They were very expensive. Every computer was a desktop, and I was working at my mom's restaurant. I had to go and buy some cups. I ran an errand. On the way out, I saw this guy selling laptops from his trunk, and of course, they're probably stolen. But because they're stolen, he was selling them for cheap. He said $500. And at the time, laptops were like 3,000 or something. And
Right.
as a screenwriter, I was like, "Oh, I need a laptop." So I go home, I go back to the restaurant, I beg my mom for the money, and she's like, "I don't business isn't good. Like we don't have a lot of money." And I just, keep begging her and saying, "Listen, it's gonna make me a better writer, blah blah. I need it. Think of it as like, as an educational tool." So she scrounges the $500 from the register, like she just gives me everything. I go back, buy the laptop, come back to the restaurant. My mom's not watching. I go in the office. I open the box. Guess what it was?
Just cardboard, what?
It was a box of bricks.
Box of bricks.
Yes, and I remember the shame, dude. I remember anger because I wanted to go kill the guy. But I remember, you know, my mom didn't have money. I had to beg her. She finally gave it to me. I had, I told her I would use it every day, and it's for my writing career and all this. And to sit there after I spent the money that my mom didn't have, and to open it up and just sit in front of a box of bricks, I felt so stupid. I felt like, "What an idiot. Why didn't you check? Like, what are you doing?" Like, I felt if my brother was there, he would smack me on my head, like, "You idiot." And, I got so embarrassed, and I felt so much shame. I never told anyone, and I just kind of, like, buried that story. But with that
Right.
story came this false belief that I'm not thorough. I don't check my boxes, and I'm too impulsive. And at the end of the day, you're an idiot, you're stupid, like those kind of things, right? And so yeah, and I remember not being able to tell anyone that, it was kind of like my dirty secret.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess how you feel talking about it now. You seem just fine talking about it now. Is there, or
I
are you
mean, it's
feeling
been,
something?
yeah, it's been many years. Now I can kind of share the story, but it's what came up for me when you were talking about shame or feeling kind of stupid or feeling weak. I mean, this is totally different, right? I didn't get hurt, but I got ripped off, and
No, no, but that's
yeah,
parallels, right? And so I think whatever the scenario is, when if we get ripped off, if we're taken for a fool, if we feel weak, if we
right,
feel
right.
that we're not strong, then what comes up is our inner critic.
Yes, yes,
And
and also,
Russell,
we feel like less of a man.
yep, yeah, it's going to tell you you're a piece of shit. You're less of a man.
Yeah,
That's the part that smacks you on the head and goes, "How could you be so fucking stupid? How could you be so impulsive?" You know.
yeah,
And I think that that's part of the narrative that comes up around vulnerability is that inner critic. How can you be fill in the blank when you're supposed to be a manly masculine man? You're not
right,
supposed to get hurt. You're supposed to get
right.
taken for a fool. Yeah, get your head out of your ass.
Yeah,
um, you know
exactly.
And so, what do you do with that? What do you do with that part of yourself? What do you do with that dialogue, that narrative, those thoughts that become feelings, those feelings that become thoughts? And pretty soon, you're taking a pickaxe to your self concept.
What do you think is prescribed, um, if something like this happens to you, or if you're feeling this way? Is it as easy as, being able to express how you feel when you're in a safe space, whether it's, to partner or kids or whoever?
So for me, the prescription is it's not like one session of like feel your feelings, but
Yeah,
feeling your feelings is really important. And recognize like radically going to and radically accepting that this is how I feel. This is not, I'm not a piece of shit. I'm not fucking stupid, but I feel
Yeah.
stupid. I feel shame. Shame
Right.
is here.
Yeah.
And so the two wings of radical acceptance are mindfulness and and radical self-compassion.
Hmm.
And so when I can accept that this thing has happened, like you're sitting in front of a box of bricks, this it happened, it's done. You're not going to go find that guy, probably not.
Right.
There's nothing I can do about the fact that my face is already has a hole in it. I can stick my tongue through my fucking cheek.
Wow.
you know, this has happened. And so as I
Yeah.
sat there on the table that day and they were putting that, they were every stitch I would say, and this too, and this too, like
Hmm.
this too, right? And now on the tail end of it, the process for me is to hopefully be able to bring radical self-compassion. I think the third step in that is naming it and saying it out loud to like someone like yourself. It's easy to say it to my wife. It's a safe space. This is
Right.
not, this isn't, but it's a different space, right? To be able to name it and say it out loud, I'm going to be sure that you fleeced yourself of a lot when you finally did tell the story and said, there I was sitting in front of a box of bricks.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that happened to you, Lair, getting hurt. I mean, you know this, but I know you've been surfing for a while. I don't. I hope you don't feel that you're less of a surfer because of it. Because of this accident. Because
I
I've
think
broken bones skating, and I used to. Yeah.
the better surfers are the ones that recognize you're not a very good surfer. Um, it's yeah, no, it's not. It's really just allowing allowing for the imperfection.
Yeah.
So it's not even really central to this experience. It's about not being perfect all the time. That you are fallible. That the the scar of kintsugi is going to be worn, and
Hmm.
this perhaps is ushering in a time for me where I don't paint the room with my experience, but be more apt to sit here at a place like this and share this with you and all of your listeners and say, yeah, this happened. And it wasn't even
Yeah.
about the scar, about this happening, because I think at the end of the day, it's probably scar's probably going to be pretty cool. Um, it's really about saying, I felt ashamed of myself.
Hmm. Yeah. That's the hard part, man. It's that
Well,
sentence. It's the.
come up and say, you know, it's like, fuck, yeah, it's like you see me like get a little emotional about the fact that it happened, and that
Yeah.
not that it happened, that I felt ashamed of myself, and it's an odd, but I think it's the same. It's very similar to sitting in front of that box of bricks and feeling what you felt.
Yeah. And me sitting here listening to you say I felt ashamed of myself. The whole thing where men sharpen other men, it gives me permission. It's so inspiring because that's also very courageous to say. And so uh listening to you say that makes me feel like, oh, it gives me permission to say that as well. And I think that's kind of
I
the
think I
power
think
in all this.
Yeah, but I think that's the power of the work that you do, right? You offer that space a lot, I think, in um, the content that you put out there, certainly, but the retreats that you do, and these places that you give men an opportunity to talk about their vulnerabilities and to touch into formerly pathologized feelings, right? Because I think that's what we do. We pathologize our feelings. I don't want to feel that. Let's talk about the game. Who's coaching?
Mm,
I don't give a shit. Um, let's do anything other than that. And so, what I find difficult is I find very, very few connections with other men in the world.
yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
It's not really permitted, like to talk like this. I don't. Again, like I didn't. I don't even know. I don't even really know who I told that this happened, because I didn't want to then say, because I couldn't tell anybody. Yeah, and I felt really ashamed about it. Like that was the crux of the experience, not the scar, not the thing. Like that was, there was some jokes in there. It was, some of it was kind of funny, and had a
Right.
really great experience with the Costa Rican, hospital system. Um, it was the crux of the experience was this other piece of shame that I haven't talked about it with anybody other than Ashley.
Yeah. Um, what we're talking about is also, I think, right now what the world needs. Um,
Yeah,
there's a wave of I don't know what to call it, but there's is that me or you? Do you hear that?
No,
Oh, it's a helicopter. Sorry. Uh, the landscape of the world right now, there's a lot of posturing. There's a lot of God, toxic. The term
when
toxic
you say it,
masculinity, I feel is played out. But yeah, there's a lot of frat life kind of what a man looks like. The, Iron Fist. There is not a lot of softness and opening and talking about things like this. So, man, what you're talking about
no,
is, I feel like, especially now, the world needs. You know,
desperately needs it, but there's not, you know, a lot of. I feel like men are often brought to their knees before they will make a call to someone like yourself or someone like me.
right?
Things really have to be going off the rails, or they have to be spousally mandated to therapy, or things have to be going really bad before they'll come in. And even then, it's like, what do we do here? How does this work?
Right.
So I just talk about feelings. Um, and again, it's like, again, I don't find these connections in the world. This thing you're talking about that is absolutely needed. Um, it brings to mind, and I hope I haven't mentioned this before, but Henry Rollins he had a show. Henry Rollins, alt icon, former
Hmm.
lead singer of Black Flag, does a great spoken word. If you haven't seen it, he's
Yeah, he's
amazing,
super talented.
super talented, and
Hmm.
he he went and interviewed these farmers in the outback of Australia who are getting together like every Sunday night around a campfire and sharing poetry.
Mm.
Now, I don't know if you had the occasion in any of your work to work with any Australian men. I've worked with both Australian men and women, and I'm sorry, I don't mean I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, so I can speak in some stereotype around culture. They're tough, you know.
Yes, they. I had one client who was Australian, and they worked. I think he worked in the mines. I mean, he was like a man's man.
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
lunchbox, 12
Yeah,
hours of work. Put your head down. Right, no feelings. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. One of my buddies is former. He's Australian Special Forces. He's actually a guy who keeps texting me about this show and like, what about this and what about? And he's a tough guy too. And these people are particularly tough. And so these farmers would get together and share these deep emotional experiences and feelings through
Mm.
poetry. And I just
Wow.
thought, wow, amazing thing. But there's that hold, and it's the hold that I think you create. Obviously, when you were doing your men's group, when you do your retreats, yeah, that's the place. And I hear about friends, clients, and friends of mine will go on these retreats, but how much of that are we bringing to our lives? How much of that is coming with you and practice in your life, um, because that's the place we need it.
Yeah.
Place we need it most, not just some anecdotal piece of like, yeah, no, that was a great retreat. You know, really awesome. I still keep in touch with that guy.
No, you got to
How
bring
are
it
we?
home for sure. Let me ask you this:
Um,
for anyone listening, any gender, if they're like, well, okay, so what's the point? Okay, so okay, we got to be vulnerable. We could, express that we feel shame, or here's how I feel my feelings. How is that going to change my life? How is that going to change the world? Like, so what would you say to that if we all started to be more honest with ourselves and
uh,
admit things, and sit, and talk about our shame and how we're feeling. What's the ripple
yeah.
of that?
So the ripple of that for me is compassion for self means compassion for you.
Mm,
Compassion for self means compassion for my partner, my kids, the person who, when I'm practicing to be compassionate towards myself. And so I think that the main problem we have, and people may push back on this, the main problem we have, when we boil it all down, socially, politically, all of it, is a lack of compassion. Because
mm,
if I have to feel for you and your trans kid or something like that, like you're struggling with that, man, I got to change all kinds of shit in me. And if I'm like lefty or whatever, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, I've got to give a shit about that guy who is conservative, but you know, works a dead end job and will never own his, knows he'll never own his house. I mean, that's the shit we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
And there is a decided lack of compassion. So to your point, like bringing compassion home to ourselves, being able to feel our feelings and not stand there and chastise ourselves, as we heard some of that dialogue that came from you and the dialogue that came from me around these two separate incidences. It's
Hmm.
like, what if we brought radical compassion to self and we're able to then bring it to the world, bring it to our families? This is that butterfly effect that happens, right? Hopefully. Um, that's what I think. I think there is a decided dearth of compassion for self and compassion for our fellow man. I don't think it's you know too much of a stretch to say that for sure.
When I was thinking about, the 25-year-old me, 27, who got ripped off and got the box of bricks instead of the laptop. Now, if I play that out, when that happened, I felt stupid. I felt shameful. Of course, I wasn't going to tell my mom. Um, I wanted to go hurt this person. So, like, I'm not a fighter. I'm not that kind of guy. But if I was, and if I was raised differently, or if I was, had gotten into more fights, I would have took a hammer. I would have went back, found the
Take
guy,
be
and
able to murder.
I would have went crazy, right? And so, but I'm saying that because where's that action coming from? And then I probably would have been, and got arrested, blah blah blah. And that action is coming from me not being able to give myself permission to feel shame. It's coming from me saying that because this happened, I'm a loser. I'm an idiot. Now I'm angry. I'm going to go after this guy. So it's almost like by not expressing, we turn into kind of like time bombs, right? And so, like, this at
Yeah.
scale, imagine how many men
Hmm.
are exploding at home, throwing chairs, punching windows, or whatever they do because they're not able to process this shame, and because they feel so horrible, uh, it's going to come out in another way, right? And so, to me, that can be destructive. That can be,
Well, to say the least, right? Because what we come to, and I cut my teeth as a therapist, as the men's anger management head when I went and did my clinical hours. That was like my first thing. And I come from a household of women who raised me, and I had to deal with right away clientele that I probably would have kicked the shit out of out in the street because they had done some terrible things to women.
Oh, right, right. They're confessing this to you, and you felt right, right.
It's like motherfucker.
Yeah,
Yeah, So I had to find compassion for these men, and what I ended up finding out was deep within these men, when we got past the aspects of themselves that did these horrible things, there was just a little boy in there who didn't feel
right,
loved, who
right,
didn't feel safe, who never felt like they were enough, who didn't feel like they mattered in the world, right? And so that strata of experience of emotionality, that's, we hit something hits into our shame and to our sadness, or what you were feeling, I want to beat him with a hammer. Of course you do, but that's the secondary response. Anger is a secondary response. We know this is
right.
something else, but it's like, look, anger is an explosion, and that feels better than the collapse of sadness, right? And so we don't want to go to the collapse because I don't know what that feels like. I'd rather explode. I'd rather throw fists. But what would happen if we got curious about our experience? What would happen if we didn't bury it or we didn't blow up, but we got curious? And that's what psychotherapy offers, right? The opportunity to get curious. And I think the dual components of curiosity and compassion are a particularly powerful tandem.
Yeah,
When we can bring them home to ourselves, like, okay, so I'm mad. What else is there? I had a client say to me, he's this military guy, CEO, badass boss dude, and he was constantly getting mad in his family, at his family. And he said the other day it was revelatory for me. He's like, I realize I'm just sad, and I don't know
mm,
how to begin my sadness, so I get mad,
hmm,
right? And so, can you imagine if we just stopped, push pause, and said, okay, mad is just information. It's a feeling, but it's really good information. Maybe our anger is an alarm bell to there's something else way more fucking interesting in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't feel like I'm enough. Man,
Right.
can you imagine if we confronted that? I don't feel safe in the world. I don't feel like I matter.
You know, what's interesting as you're saying that, I'm thinking about our parents, moms and dads, who, hit us with belts and grounded us, and all this stuff. And of course, we look at that and we think how horrible they were. But when you think about where that was coming from, and you start thinking about, oh, our parents also felt like a piece of shit,
Yeah.
or not deserving, or lots of shame, confusion, fear.
Yep.
They did
Inadequacy.
they didn't have the tools to process it, and so what came out of that was go to your room, you know,
No, they
or
just,
getting hit or whatever,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they created a culture of fear, which is not respect. And it's understandable when you look at it from that perspective, because, this is all fairly new stuff. The idea of there being a strata of emotionality, and that like anger is a secondary response to something else.
Yeah. You know, I kind of wanted to end with this, and I love what happened today, because although I do believe in somewhat having outlines, magic happens when you toss the blueprints, right? You shared a story about an accident, stitches, the surfboard coming up, hitting your face,
Mhm.
being embarrassed by it, humbling you, and then you having lots of shame, not wanting to tell anyone. I shared a story about taking $500 from my mom when she didn't have that money,
Yeah.
and buying what I thought was a laptop, but that turned out to be a box of bricks, right? And
Yeah.
here's the thing: how do you feel about us as we share that? What is happening with you? Because on my side, I mean, obviously, I feel closer to you, but uh, God, man, so many things are happening just by us sharing those two stories. You know what I'm saying? Like walls come
Yeah.
down. I have empathy for you. I feel for you. I can relate to you. I can relate to the shame that you're feeling because I've experienced the different. Like so many things happen, and this is relationship glue. This is foundational. This is how trust is built, right? And so if we're not doing
Beyond.
this, if men aren't doing this to each other, if we're just talking about, the scoreboard and Porsches and corner offices and, a lot of, or just competing, it's really, the two magnets that are flipped. And that's what I see in the world with men right now. A lot of competitive competition. I'm better than you, stronger than you, have more money than you.
Yeah, let's just get our dicks out and measure, is really what I see happening. Do you
Well, I'm
know?
not going to win. With that, I'm not going to win for sure. But I'm a girl.
You
But
know
hey,
that.
listen, man. Hey, I made a baby. I made a baby. Vanessa's okay with it. She loves it. Listen. I'm good with it now at 51. I'm good with it now at 51. But you know what? When I'm back in college days, that was one of my biggest insecurities as an Asian man.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, we're all kind of like, unless you just, well, I mean, that's a whole other story. But it's like, that's, I think, to your point. To your point, I really don't want to miss your point, because I think your point is a really good one. Do you know that what are we doing, if not that? Because that is the glue. Um, but it's so difficult to have those conversations, and to not like go to like, hey, did you see that kick the other day? And
Right.
it just doesn't do anything for me. Like, I don't give a shit. I'd rather be alone, because I can feel really alone in a room full
Hmm.
of people having that conversation.
Yeah.
I do. I feel absolutely alone. I'd prefer not to go out. But what I find is that what I think I'm finding, I may be projecting, is that um, when someone starts talking about the game, and I turn to them and go, "Hey, how's your wife? How you guys doing? What's going on there?
Right.
What's
Right.
happening with your kid?" I'm
Yeah.
like the fucking turkey punch bowl.
Yeah.
It's like, who wrote that guy? But I just don't find it interesting. I'd far rather have this conversation with you.
Hmm. I think the world needs more of these conversations, and it's not just a conversation. You and I shared a moment, right? So,
That's right.
again, that's man, that's what makes us human. That's what stretches our hearts. That's what creates compassion.
That's right.
Storytelling, also, since we were drawing things in caves, it's always been through stories that we learn and grow, and it hasn't been just competing and showing off and bragging about trophies. Um, it's sitting around the fire telling stories and being honest. And so,
What if we brought that back? What if we brought that back, like storytelling, like the, it's akin to what those Australian farmers were doing.
with the poets.
Yeah, yeah. Get a group
Yeah,
of people together, got to tell a story.
yeah. Well, hey, thank you for being vulnerable, for sharing that story. And dude, I admire you and I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing. Thank you for all of that.
Yeah, you as well, bud.
Yeah.
Truly.
In the show notes, you can pick up there's relationship book. It's a foundational book. It's a book that you want as one of the primary colors, not just for couples, but also if you want to love anyone. Period.
Hmm.
Name of the
Relationship
book and where
self
they
love.
can get it.
It's called The Practice of Love, and you can get it wherever finer books are sold.
Nice. All right. Thank you for listening. Be well.
Thanks.
All right. Hey, we're gonna go down there
Yeah.
next